Welcome to Imprint. This is a programme about new and old books, about authors and their best-selling novels, and we will also be talking to readers about novels or books that have made a big impression on them. In this programme we will be also speaking to a well-known personality who is also a very keen reader and will be telling us about which books have given him the greatest pleasure. As this is our first show, who better to meet than one of Ireland's outstanding fiction writers who has had a bestseller since 1997. Cathy Kelly tells us how she started to write. Cathy, as one of Ireland's most successful fiction writers, the obvious question to start with is, how did you start to write?
Well, I always wanted to write, Owen. When I was at school, I loved writing. I mean, English was my favourite thing. I know the old cliches are the best, but it's true. And I never thought you could write as a job. So when I left school, I was toying with a lot of different professions, and I ended up going into the Rathmines Journalism College, and I became a journalist, and I worked in the Sunday World for many a year. But I always harboured the thoughts of writing a book. But, you know, work and mortgage, and I think when you're sitting in an office every day writing, you don't think about going home to do it. And then one day somebody said, well, stop talking about this book and do it. And I think I was, what age was I at the time? I suppose I was 26, 27. And I said, right, I'll do it. And I started trying to write the sort of book I'd like to read. And that book became Woman to Woman, which was my first novel. And it was lovely. I'd go home late at night and I'd be tired, and I'd say, I'll just do half an hour on the computer, and 2 hours later I'd still be at it. Because I found I loved it and I enjoyed it. And so I wrote 3 books and still worked full time, and then finally I gave up the old journalism, and this is it now, here.
Yes. Well, there's supposed to be a book in every one of us, but you started off with 3 of you.
Yeah, I started off with 3 in me, yes.
Yes, yes. Having children in the house must be a problem for writing, but surely having twins creates even a greater problem for you.
You see, this is the key problem in my life, time management. Yes. Before I had children, I would go in and spend, we'll say, 8 hours at my desk. And I'm sure a certain amount of those 8 hours were involved in flithering around, looking at emails. And now it's harder with children, because I want to be with them all the time. So that, you know, I have to sort of tear myself away to go in and write. So I try and do what I call, you know, work clever, which, you know, ungrammatical, but so I write for less time, but I try and focus more and less flithering around on the emails.
But I find that startling, Cathy, that 8 hours a day, people don't even work 8 hours a day. There's no way surely you can sit in front of a computer.
No, I think absolutely not. The problem was I would spend a huge amount of time like looking at what I did yesterday and editing and re-editing, which is very important, I think, to go over what you've done again and again. The negative is you become your own worst critic, and you sit there and you go, that was desperate. And I think that's one of the hardest things about writing, turning off the internal critic and letting yourself actually write.
Cathy, there is an alarming array of books here behind you, and I see your name is practically on every one of them, if not on every one of them. Tell me more.
Yes, these are my foreign editions, and it was very exciting. I always remember the first foreign edition I got, and you know, you hear about these deals from your publisher, and you're like, oh my God. I think the first one I ever got was Latvia, and I'm very bad at geography. At the time I was going, Latvia, where exactly is that? And it was $500. I think I went out and I went, oh, I'll spend that instantly. Not that I got it instantly. I don't think I ever got the Latvian book. But anyway, these are all different ones, and there's some, I mean, they're just so funny. Look at this. I don't know. What is that? That's Polish. Actually, yes, that's Polish. And there was a Japanese one. Oh, this is a Russian one. Anyway, it's just funny. And I sit here and I work here and I look at them and I go, God, look at all those books. So it astonishes me too. Oh, I know, the Japanese one. I quite like that. I can't reach that. Oh, and that's that blue one up there.
Have you any idea, Cathy?
What? See, they could be writing, this is total rubbish in the other languages. And I mean, it's just funny. When I get them in the post, normally the agent sends a little bit of paper to say what book it's in and what language, because otherwise you wouldn't know. But anyway, it's lovely.
And when you start to write, do you have in your mind a beginning, a middle and an end to the book?
Yes, I do. I have, it's vague, but I have that. I don't have all the fine detail. When I used to work in journalism, I liked interviewing other writers because I was sure that if I interviewed them, I would find out this secret. I was convinced there was a secret, and now I know the secret is just go into the room, sit down and write. But I thought there was some other secret. And they all said that the story takes over. After a while, the characters take over and they do their own thing. And I thought they were all on drugs when they said this to me. But it's true. The story takes over. So you know roughly where it's going to end, but how it gets there is part of the magical mystery.
So it is as interesting for you as a writer as it is for the people who read the book, obviously.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it is interesting, but it can be annoying sometimes because you have a plan that you want the person to go in this direction and the character is not going to go in that direction. That's why people always want to know if you put real people in books. And you don't, because A, my mind can come up with lots of interesting people. But B, if I put a real person in a book, say I put you in a book and I changed your name, the real you would be wanting to do things. I would say, well, Owen would never do that. I mean, that's stupid. So you can't put real people in books. Which begs
the obvious question, have you ever been accused
of
putting people
endlessly,
into the book?
Endlessly.
Do they identify themselves in any negative way?
No, I think I've been accused of that before. When I worked in journalism, my second book was also set in journalism. I think journalists write about journalism in the beginning because it's what you know. And there was this very nasty sports editor. And people kept saying, is that the sports editor? And I was going, no, please. A, I like to think I have an imagination. And B, I know about libel. So no, it's not the sports editor. But no. I mean, real life comes into your books for sure. But you don't, I suppose bits of real people are going into your brain and then you're filtering them out onto a character. So maybe you meet someone with this mad laugh and somehow the next day you're writing and there's someone with a mad laugh in your book. But it's like everything is going in and you're then filtering it out.
And when you're writing away, can you see these people clearly in your own mind?
Yes, you have to be able to see them. I think Maeve Binchy actually, who had this wonderful piece of advice, which is that every character she writes, she has a little biog almost on them, so she knows who they are. She can see those people. And sometimes when I write far too much backstory about the character, yes, which is as much for me as for anyone else. And then towards the end of the book, I delete all that because the reader doesn't need to know it. I need to know it to work out, why this person is the way they are, and the fact that they had a sister and they always used to fight when they were 15, stuff like that. This one, it's set in China in 1922.
It's a novel, I take it.
This, I know, look at this, it's a fabulous thing. Was it a 1920s China teeters on the very verge of civil war? It's called The Emperor's Bones by Adam Williams. And somebody gave it to me and said it was wonderful. And it is actually amazing. It's incredibly evocative, and you're getting the whole sense of sort of the Europeans in China, and then you're getting the feeling of coming up to the Chinese battles in the 20s between all the various warlords. The only problem is that there's so many Chinese names in it that it is actually slightly confusing. I have a problem trying to remember them all because they invert them, so the surname is first, so I'm sort of trying to remember them all. But it's wonderfully evocative. I'd love to go to China, actually, but I've never been.
A friend of mine is a wine connoisseur, and he writes on wines, and he says nobody will ever give him a present of a bottle of wine. They're all frightened to do so. Anybody frightened to give you a present?
That's actually true. No, people will lend me books. I never really get books for presents, and it would be my ideal present. But I suppose I spend so much time in bookshops, and I buy so many books. We've hidden some of the bags now because it looks so messy. But I think people would be afraid because they think that I'd have read everything anyway. But I love it when someone says, this is a fabulous book, and you read it, and it is. I mean, I couldn't get out of bed reading this, you see. I think it's like, daily therapy, really. They're writing, it is, it's wonderful. Yes, I don't think you need therapy when you're a writer because you have it every day.
A form of escapism, perhaps?
Total escapism. It's another world you can go into. I think I was going into another world from when I was about 5, and it's lovely. It's a lovely world.
Lovely note to finish on. A pleasure talking to you.
Thank you all.